Hey, Cleveland, this is Mo Williams, and you're listening to Sports Fix.
Sports Fix listeners, do you tweet? So do we. So tweet with us 24/7 at the Sports Fix CLE.
Hey guys, J-Rocc here from the Sports Fix, and we always talking about using our platform to try to help the world and the society we live in, and everywhere I go and everywhere we go, bullying is one of the problems in today's society. There's nothing worse than any person, big or small, strong or weak, adult or child, feeling picked on, pushed around, vulnerable, and victimized at the hands of a bully. Change comes one person at a time, and my good friends at No Such Thing as a Bully are working on skills and techniques and ways that we can all change and make things better for everyone. Find out more at nosuchthingasabully.com.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Harry Buffalo. Catch every UFC pay-per-view live in full HD at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd.
Live in Ohio, it's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
And indeed, we are back, we are live, and yes, it is time to get your fix. J-Rocc back in the studio, back in the saddle, riding this bad boy, and the Sports Fix is on the air, Wednesday edition. Going to have a lot of fun. Dan Wismar is going to join us. We've got a lot to talk about since the last time we were here. Super Bowl 50 in the books. Denver Broncos 24, Carolina Panthers 10. Peyton Manning further cements his legacy as he is the only quarterback in the history of the NFL now to start and win 2 Super Bowls with 2 different teams. And Peyton Manning continues to put the exclamation points on a career. And I got to tell you, just off the top, we'll talk about it here in a little bit. My gut says he may not be going anywhere. He is drinking some Budweiser. I did know that from his post-game speech. How slick was that? I don't know how much Budweiser paid for that, but clearly that was a plan to drop his very first line. Well, I'm going to drink some Budweiser, and I'm going to enjoy this. I said, man, I was telling a buddy last night, I said, if I'm Budweiser, I'm talking to Peyton's people right now, and I'm paying X amount of dollars. I don't care if it's $1 million, $5 million, $10 million for the most priceless publicity you could get. And I'm just going to pay Peyton Manning whenever he does decide to retire. The first sentence is just, well, I'm going to drink a Budweiser and enjoy the first day of the rest of my retirement. And that clip will live on forever. Budweiser could never pay for better publicity than that. But I'm telling you, did he not have the perfect scenario to go out on? And he still may, don't get me wrong. He may want to think about everything. But honestly, I got to think going into this thing, if he was going to go, he was going to go. Win, lose, or draw, he probably had his mind made up before the game or whatnot. And to have this scenario, I just don't know why. Why would you want to make that announcement in a sterile press conference environment? And hey, maybe you just wanted to get away from the emotion of the moment. But my gut tells me that the gunslinger may want to come back out there and pull that draw one more time. He may want to take 10 paces with you. He may not be done. But if he is, couldn't have picked a better way to go, most definitely. We'll have to find out. But the Broncos, how about that defense, too? That Broncos defense put a stamp down on themselves as one of the better ones in recent memory for sure. The number that they did on Cam Newton was ridiculous. And I know there's all the focus afterwards on all the stuff about Cam Newton, but he had every reason to be frustrated. I'm not saying his reaction was right at all, but he definitely was frustrated by that defense. That man could not drop back in the second half without having somebody on him and him getting taken down to the ground. So we're going to talk about the Super Bowl. Dan Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland will be in here to join in on that. Another one in the books. This one, let's see, I think it's the 3rd most watched program in the history of U.S. television, behind only the 2015 and 2014 Super Bowls. So there was a lot of interest in this. A lot of that has to do with the fresh matchup and the storylines that were built in there. Young gun, old gunslinger. Is it Peyton's last stand? Carolina, being a fresh face in the Super Bowl. Big numbers for them as always. And it was, to be honest, it was a ho-hum game in all reality. And defensive games will do that to you. Everybody likes a shootout, but look at the trend with the Seattle Seahawks, with the Denver Broncos, for all the talk about big flashy offenses and scoring 50 points and the future of the game is through the air. Defenses have been winning the Super Bowls lately, and I think that trend continues. I still believe that's where football is won and lost. I don't care what all your newfangled analytics and numbers will show you. And I think the Denver Broncos showed you that right there, because they dismantled an offense that had been prolific throughout the season and into the playoffs, and they just absolutely dismantled those guys. So anyways, though, we're going to talk about the Super Bowl here. We're going to get into that. The Super Bowl commercials. I literally had to go back and look at articles on the internet of who, like, USA Today thought the best ones were, because none of them even stuck in my head. Super Bowl babies, that's it. That was the only good one them cats had, was Super Bowl babies. I just was not feeling any of it. Some years you go, man, these were great. You know, the Radio Shack one last year with all the 80s icons, still one of my favorites. But, man, this year was eh. And the game to match it, because it was a defensive battle, and it was won by Denver. We're going to talk about it with Dan Wismar. We're going to talk with you. Once I get my intros out of the way, I'm popping the phone lines open, because it's been 10 days since we've been in the studio. That's right, Bruce. Offense wins regular season games. Defense wins championships and Super Bowls. And I'm telling you, it'll be that way till the end of time in the National Football League. We're going to talk about all that. As I said, Dan's with us, and I'm opening up the lines to you. We're going to talk Johnny Manziel. Hey, look, last time we were in here, I know we were talking about the whole we're not going to talk about Johnny thing, but this is news. This isn't, hey, the Browns got a bust of a quarterback. This is some legitimate stuff going. It's just some hardcore stuff continuing to pile out about this guy. And I was talking to some people off the air in the last couple of days. I mean, it's gone beyond anybody about, who's right, who's wrong, give the kid a chance. None of that. It's beyond gimmicks. It's beyond being too famous. It's beyond being rich and spoiled. I mean, this is getting into some ugly, ugly territory here. And, we're going to talk a little bit about that here as well. Cavaliers, Kobe Bryant, final time coming to Cleveland. We'll get into some Cavs talk as they have the final game coming up tonight with the Lakers. Then they'll hit the All-Star break. They're off for, I believe they don't play again until the 18th, so they'll have 9 days in between games here once they finish this one up. 5 days left. By the time we're back live in the studio, pitchers and catchers will report for spring training, so there's a whole lot on the slate. Let's dig out from it, kind of like that blizzard hitting Northeast Ohio right now. Let's dig out from underneath it together, baby. Welcome into the Sports Fix. I am your host, the Big Daddy on the microphone, J-Rocc, Jerry Myers, with you guys here, doing the thing across the Sports Fix radio network. Many of you tuning in live on TuneIn, no pun intended, TuneIn's digital and mobile app. Maybe you're listening live, Spreaker, Mixler, their respective digital apps as well. Perhaps you're enjoying the show, as many of you do, right on our home base, thesportsfix.net. If you don't, or if you're not sure where it's at, that's it. It's so simple, and it's a backup site. Anytime, wherever you listen to the show, if something's down, if one of the sites aren't streaming, you can always go right to thesportsfix.net and pull us up. The show plays automatically live right there on the site. Plus, it's got a built-in player that's handy right at the top of the screen. You can pull up all of the most recent episodes and everything right there. So bookmark it if you haven't. Thesportsfix.net as well. Thanks to everybody, thousands of you guys, every time we do this, that listen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week around the world. Digital delay on sites such as iHeartRadio, the world's largest internet radio provider, on iTunes, on Stitcher Radio, and on all of the largest podcast providers that are out there. However you're doing it, getting your fix, thank you guys so much. I say it all the time, and I mean it each and every time I say it. Phones are already ringing. We're going to crack them open. 216-539-7535. 216-539-7535. We're going to get in at least one phone call here, maybe two. Then we'll get Dan Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland in on the conversation. If you can't get in on the phones, listening to us on your mobile device, perhaps, hit us up on our social media. That's what it's there for. Facebook, Twitter, email, facebook.com/thesportsfix, Twitter @thesportsfixcle. You can tweet me directly at J-Rocc Daddy. It's that simple. J-R-O-C-C Daddy. You can tweet the show at the Sports Fix CLE. Hit me up on Instagram at J-Rocc Daddy, just like the Twitter. And you can email us at thesportsfix@AOL.com. Again, thesportsfix@AOL.com. Like us, follow us, friend us while you're there. Join the over 25,000 strong that follow us, the Sports Fix, on social media. And we're going to get rolling. You know what? I'm done talking. I've already got on a whirling dervish here to start things off. It has been far too long since I've cracked open the phone lines and talked to any of you guys, so we're just going to hit the random button here. Boom. We'll go pull up the phones. Caller, kick us off on the Sports Fix. How you doing?
J-Rocc Daddy.
LGZ, baby. What's happening, my man?
How you doing, J-Rocc? I know it's been a long time since we talked. I haven't talked to you all year.
Matter of fact, it's been so long since we've talked that you now bring an extra set of baggage with you when you go on vacation, my man. Congratulations in order to you, yes?
No kidding. How you been, brother?
I'm good, man. You're just going to no-sell the fact that you got married since the last time you were on the Sports Fix here, man. Congratulations, my friend.
Wow, it's been that long? That was the day after Thanksgiving.
I do believe.
I married Beth.
I believe it's been that long since you've called on the air, absolutely.
Oh, my goodness. I didn't realize it. Boy,
where you been?
You're having fun, J-Rocc Daddy.
Heck yeah, man. I hope you guys are having fun. How are you feeling today? A lot of stuff going on. Super Bowl, how'd you like that game the other day?
Man, J-Rocc Daddy, I'll tell you, I was shocked at how well the Denver Broncos defense performed against Cam Newton and that Carolina Panthers offense. I got to tell you, J-Rocc Daddy, a lot of people were talking to me about this game, and let's face the facts here. I'm a sentimental guy, and I really would have liked to see, and I did see, Peyton Manning get his second Super Bowl ring. Obviously, his time is dwindling down, and hopefully he's smart enough to get out while he's on top, because I just don't think we're seeing the same Peyton Manning we've seen for all those years he's been in the NFL. He needs a new hip. He needs a hip replacement. God only knows how his back's doing. You know, he had the neck problems. Everybody thought he'd never play football again. How good was it to see a living legend like Peyton Manning capture that ring, J-Rocc Daddy?
Oh, I agree, and I'm with you. That I thought the opportunity's set, and I would, just for the story and ending it on top and going out on the horse and riding, the whole going off into the sunset thing, I'd love to see that be the final bell for Peyton.
Now we just have to hold.
But I don't know that it is. I don't know that it is, man. My gut says that this guy may talk himself into coming back, which is fine. If he can still do it, he can. But we are definitely seeing the decline. Maybe he's not at the bottom, but we are definitely seeing the decline. Now, I think the question is that Denver defense legit enough to hold up for another season? Because if it is, Peyton can walk them through another season. He can definitely not lose you games. And as we've seen, he can come up big one or two more times when needed. So I think now you got to consider that. And I think maybe that's what he's thinking about. And that's what the Broncos are thinking about is, what do we do here? Do we take another? Because you would hate to see him take another shot. I think about, even in recent history, Brett Favre, when he took the run and it looked like the storyline was going to be perfect and he was going to run to the Super Bowl with the Vikings there at the end, and he fell just short in the championship game.
He didn't have a leg to run on, if you remember.
Yeah, and he gave everything he had, though, but that was the one to go out on, and he didn't. They came back again, and it of course, the end wasn't what it should have been, and it is what it is, but that's my point. And so, do you come back and take another shot?
That's what I'm saying, J-Rocc Daddy. It would be a shame to see a guy like Peyton Manning take a beating all season long. Yes, the Broncos defense is probably legit enough to come back next year and have a dominating season. Von Miller played out of his shoes during that game. So did Ware.
So did DeMarcus Ware. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Hey, look at the Cleveland Browns players that are on that team. Norwood, T.J. Watt. I mean, these guys are wearing Super Bowl rings.
Hey, you know what? That's secondary. Up front was great, of course, getting all that pressure, but that Denver secondary is awesome too, and they got Bradley Roby, the Buckeye back there, and as you said, T.J. Ward, the former Brown. So, I mean, I'll tell you, I think that defense can definitely come back and go through it again, man. So that may be what the Broncos are thinking about.
Let's face it, J-Rocc, they controlled Cam Newton. I mean, you saw the frustration in the post,
especially in the second half. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. They controlled one of the best athletes that plays quarterback in the National Football League. I mean, this is a linebacker playing quarterback with a linebacker's mentality that control the football.
Yeah, and they dominated that offensive line, too.
Control a guy like Cam Newton the way that they controlled him, I was shocked. I really didn't think I was going to see it like that. And honestly, that's why I'm not a heavy gambler, J-Rocc Daddy, because I would be broke. Because I would have bet on the Carolina Panthers to beat the Denver Broncos in Super Bowl 50. That's the bottom line, man. Thank God I'm smart enough to stay away from them bookies.
Oh, I'm with you.
J-Rocc Daddy, I want to talk to you about something else, too, man. What in the world is going to be in the future for the Cleveland Browns, man? I mean, let's face it, we're coming up on another draft. We definitely need a quarterback with all the troubles and tribulations that Johnny Manziel's faced with these days. And not only do we need a quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, everybody's probably focused on that, but yesterday, 8 more indictments handed down against Pilot Flying J employees and former employees. A lot of people don't realize the consequences that 8 more indictments. The guy at the top of the food chain, Mark Hazelwood, who was Jimmy Haslam's president for years at Pilot Flying J, answered directly to the Cleveland Browns owner, Jimmy Haslam. Okay?
All right.
Now, Hazelwood's facing 3 counts of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and 1 count of witness tampering. Now, put yourself in the situation, J-Rocc Daddy. You can either go to jail for a whole lot of years, okay?
Okay.
Or
you can roll.
State's evidence.
Oh, yeah, brother.
Against the man at the top. Which one do you pick, brother?
Oh, I know where you're going. I know exactly what you're going. What you're doing.
There's no way, and I wrote countless articles about this two and a half years ago when the story first broke. It could be probably closer to 3 years ago now. There's no way that I could sit here in this chair and think to myself that Jimmy Haslam knew nothing about what was taking place at the company he's at the helm of.
I'll tell you what, if I'm Jimmy Haslam, on top of everything else, I mean, that's a point that people, I think, are just now starting, because I think this story with the indictments coming down, yesterday afternoon or whatever, is really just now starting to hit and percolate with people, because as you said, it's almost like if you're I liken it to if you watch like The Sopranos, if you got into that, and it's almost like a season long, is Big Puss gonna roll on Tony, and then when's Tony gonna find out? It's almost like Jimmy Haslam goes to sleep every night with one eye open, wondering who's gonna roll on him, because seriously, as you said, I mean, this guy is facing Hazelwood here, who was the former president. I mean, he could be it's a huge difference when you start talking about making deals. And a lot of times these guys, even if they are steadfast loyal, when you start staring 30, 40, 50 years in the clink in the face, all of a sudden that loyalty gets tested a heck of a lot quicker than it ever did before. And, like they always say, the test is not in prosperity. The test is then when it breaks down into bad times. So if I'm Jimmy Haslam, I'm sleeping worried. I'll tell you what, I'm sleeping worried even if I'm innocent, if I'm Jimmy Haslam. And I'll say that just to be fair across the board. Because even if you don't have anything that you did wrong, the possibility still exists that somebody, because I mean, even if and I'm not in any way saying I know the slightest about Jimmy Haslam's innocence or guilt, but even if you are innocent, you have to worry about people rolling you anyway, just to try to alleviate some of the punishment that's going to come down on themselves. Now, if you do have skeletons in the closet, then you're really worried. But, I mean, that is now the fire that's burning on top of the stuff that's going on with the Browns. I mean, since we've been on the air last, whether it's looking at the horrible details coming out with Johnny Manziel and his domestic violence and the assault that he's been accused of against his former girlfriend. I mean, that's some nasty stuff. And then the Browns thing, and covering it up with the league. There's all these little brush fires going on, and this could be the fire that burns the whole forest down.
You know what, J-Rocc, Manziel is a little bit in deeper than just assault nowadays. If you think about what Bruce Wood says, terroristic threats, kidnapping, and domestic violence. I mean, this guy.
That's an ugly story, by the way, LG. Forget if you like the kid, if you think he's a football. I don't care about anything that has to do with Johnny football. J-Rocc, that is ugly what's going on with him as those details come out. I mean, I'll tell you what, that is there was so much more underneath the surface than what people realized with that kid.
Let's forget about Manziel for a second.
Absolutely.
Don't like
Easy.
him. Let's get back to the Cleveland Browns as a unit, J-Rocc Daddy. Not only are all these stories breaking about Haslam's employees being indicted, the Cleveland Browns are supposedly behind a big cover-up, which I broke that story on January 5th. Cover-up with Manziel coming to camp, polluted.
You know what? Let me jump in real quick
there. The Browns may have put him into the concussion protocol.
Let me jump in there real quick, by the way, because that was the first week of January when LG put that article out. It was the same time that we went on the air and basically reported the same thing, which was, and I heard this directly from over there in Berea. I wasn't told that he was drunk. I was told that he was hungover and he may have even still been slightly inebriated, but it was the back end of a bender and they kicked him out, and then the whole concussion thing was a cover-up. You guys know my email and phone numbers and all that stuff. I'll be waiting on the apologies from a few of the nastier people that are out there that blatantly just called me a bold-faced liar and literally like assaulted my credibility. If there's one thing I don't do, as you guys know, it's get all sensationalistic. I may get hot and passionate every once in a while, but I don't spread rumors. I don't do gaga and nonsense and all that stuff. And I'm just saying, there was a lot of people quick to go, oh man, the Browns already said that wasn't true. You're just making up stories. They're never so fast to follow up with the apology, because I remember that as now those details come out. Now the Browns really, here's the thing, LG, I don't think the Browns can get in trouble for that, because all they have to say is what actually happened. Even if they know that he was in the bag, the minute he says he has a headache, the Browns, the concussion policy actually saves the Browns in that situation, because the minute he says he has a headache, you put him in the protocol and wash your hands of it, and it's now the NFL's problem. It's not your problem. So that, I think, is what will protect the Browns, because all the Browns have to do is look at the league and say, hey, the guy told us he had a headache. We can't accuse him of something that we don't know about. So I don't think the Browns will be held responsible there, but clearly the Browns were covering up for him, and we all knew it back then, and the people were in denial about it. I would hope, if anything else, not just fans, but I would hope friends, family, anybody close to Johnny Manziel would break out of the enabler role by this point in time and stop protecting this kid before he does something he can't come back from in all reality.
Well, theoretically, J-Rocc, he already pulled the trigger on that, because he can't take back the fact that Colleen Crowley's eardrum has been ruptured. And
Absolutely.
She's probably going to be deaf in the one ear. I mean, you can't take that back. It's like firing a bullet out of a gun and hitting somebody, and then there's no way to take that back. But that's number one. Number two, let's go back to the Cleveland Browns as an organization. If you remember my article on the 5th, the perfect plan was that the Browns would pin this on Ray Farmer and Mike Peyton, because they knew they would no longer be employed by the team.
Absolutely. You got to have a fall guy.
Top of
Absolutely.
the food chain, J-Rocc Daddy.
Yes.
The top of the food chain is Jimmy Haslam, man. And this Jimmy Haslam's the guy that took Manziel in the draft. Jimmy Haslam's the man that had nothing but money signed in his eyes, thinking I'm going to sell all kinds of paraphernalia about Johnny Manziel. There was talk about Haslam putting all the Johnny Manziel merchandise throughout his Pilot Flying J truck stop umpire. J-Rocc, this is a guy that's at the top of a $31 billion company. $31 billion a year in sales, okay?
Yeah.
How much more do you really need when you're in charge of a $31 billion umpire? That's an unfathomable question, man.
Hey, man, what's the old expression? Nothing exceeds like excess. There's no measurement for greed out there, brother. You know. So I hear you. How much is enough? Sometimes for some people,
the whole thing comes down to this, J-Rocc Daddy. If the NFL just wants to run an investigation, and with Roger Goodell at the helm, you really have no idea which way this NFL can flop. They should have did something about Johnny Manziel's alleged assault here in Cleveland when it happened.
With Avon,
it probably would have curtailed something from happening. What happened down there in the Dallas, Texas area this past week or two.
And that, you know what, real quick, that's why I think the NFL is going to put the hammer down. And I'm going to talk about this with Dan on the other side of the break when we come back. That's why what you just said, that exact sentence, is why I think they're going to put the hammer down on this kid, the NFL, because there's already people saying, had you done something when the first warning sign came up with the Avon incident, then maybe this doesn't happen. And if you don't put the hammer down after something as serious as this, then what could possibly happen next? On top of the fact that these details, listen, there's no videotape of this, but for all the talk of how vile and disgusting Ray Rice was, you have to apply those exact same words to this incident with Johnny Manziel. When you see the details of him forcibly dragging her into a car, literally kidnapping her, beating her in two separate locations, and then continuing the assault somewhere else. That is a disgusting, vile situation that has nothing to do with rich privilege or any of the things that people normally talk about with Johnny Manziel. This doesn't have to do with drugs or alcohol. This is a much uglier thing, and it needs to be addressed by the league in the same manner that they addressed a situation as vile as Ray Rice, because if they don't, you will very rightfully, and I agree, and I normally don't get into the racial arguments and stuff, but there will be a whole firestorm coming down on the NFL if they are perceived to have gone lighter on Johnny Manziel with such ugly details now coming out.
That's it. That's exactly right, J-Rocc Daddy. You can't cover this up anymore than what they already were involved with. And I think that the NFL may feel a little bit of egg on their face, if that's the right term, thinking about the investigation that they pulled the last time in the Avon incident, coming to Cleveland, talking to the Cleveland Browns organization, talking to Johnny Manziel, and I have a feeling that there was a massive cover-up taking effect there, because obviously that's Jimmy Haslam's M.O., J-Rocc Daddy. He thinks he's above everybody else. He thinks he's smarter than everybody else. I mean, go back to the Flying J truck stop swindle. They thought that the normal people were too stupid to realize they were being ripped off. Well, guess what?
Yeah, you know what? That's one of the most damning lines in that whole indictment that came down, was the fact that they literally called their customer, they separated their customers by more sophisticated and less sophisticated, which basically means which ones are dumb enough not to notice that we're ripping them off. That's basically exactly what that means. LG, perfect way to end that, my friend. I've got to hit the break.
J-Rocc, let's just take it one step further. He does the same thing to the Cleveland Browns fans. Which ones are dumb enough to keep buying them season tickets, understanding that Jimmy Haslam has no idea how to run a football team, and he's the one that brought Johnny Manziel here. He set us back I don't know how many years. You know what the sad reality is, J-Rocc Daddy? I think
Lay it
since
on me.
1999, we're talking 16 first-round draft picks. We can't pin them all on Haslam, okay? But you can't keep continuing dumb after dumb after dumb. 16
we know,
first-round draft picks.
Larry.
Where are
I
they
know.
now?
We all know. I'll tell you what, we're going to find out how good of a leader Hugh Jackson is, because he has his back against the wall, and he needs to roll his sleeves up.
I don't think we've talked since they hired Hugh, have we?
No, but I've really got to take the break. Let's do it
J-Rocc
next week,
Daddy,
LG. Let's do that next week, because I've got to get Dan in.
I just want to make one more statement. This is the first time I felt excited about a Cleveland Browns football coach being hired. And now, with this Manziel syndrome that's taking place, I feel bad for the guy. That's
you know what, Hugh?
Have a good rest of the show. I'll talk to you, brother.
I love you, LG. I was excited about Hugh. I think he was the one I got most jazzed up about since maybe going all the way back to Butch Davis. Although I did like the hiring of Mangini, but I don't think any of those guys really got me excited. They were just like good possibilities. I did like when they hired Butch Davis back, about a decade ago. Hughes got me excited, but man, he's got his work cut out for him now. Let's pick it up there. Take a break. When we come back after the news, Dan Wismar joins in on the conversation, and we'll talk about all of these things. Hit a little Super Bowl talk, Broncos with the win, what's next for Peyton, a little bit more about Johnny Manziel, I'm sure. Kobe Bryant, final trip to Cleveland as the Cavaliers and the Lakers do battle to end the first half for the Cavs before the All-Star break. We're going to do all that, and who knows where else we're going to go, but we're going to go there with Dan Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland, and we're going to do it next after the news here on the Sports Fix.
The Sports Fix, your choice for intelligent talk.
I'm expecting a very important delivery at the house, so could you please call me if it arrives? I'll give you my cell number. 401-555-1125.
440.
No, I was just repeating the 4. 1-4.
1-4.
Intelligent talk.
Okay, 1125.
1125. 155.
I'm not giving you quantities of the numbers. I'm giving you the numbers. 1125. Those are the last 4 numbers.
Oh, I see. 1125.
Yes. All right. Now read the number back to me.
Let me get my pen.
The Sports Fix will be right back.
Hey guys, before we go to the break, I want to talk to you a little bit again about our good friends at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championships, some of the hottest fights in the world today. Each and every one of their huge events, Harry Buffalo is one of the few places in Northeast Ohio you can go there and watch each and every UFC fight at the Harry Buffalo. And let me tell you, I've been there. The people are out the door. They are to the rafters. It is one of the craziest environments for some UFC fights. Wing Mondays, they've got great deals on wings and drinks, and every day of the week there's a different special, a different deal. And don't forget the Bison Burger, the unbelievable. It is the combination of a fantastic burger and eating healthy combined into one unbelievable sandwich. You have got to get a Bison Burger while you're there. So whatever you're looking for, whatever day of the week, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sundays, there's something for you at the Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Check them out today. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
Sports Fix listeners, do you tweet? So do we. So tweet with us 24/7 at the Sports Fix CLE.
I'm Little Teapot, short and stout.
Here is my handle and here is my spout.
No, Dad, like this. When I get all steamed up, then I shout, tip me over and
pour me out. This is WWE superstar Roman Reigns. The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
Visit fatherhood.gov, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Fantasy sports lovers, you put so much time, hard work, and effort into playing week to week that it quickly stops being a fantasy and starts getting real. Real time spent making real decisions, creating real victory.
I'm the greatest man in the world!
And when the smoke clears, you want to show off those victories with a real prize. I mean, a really real prize.
Yeah.
Nobody does that like Fantasy Jocks. The crew over at Fantasy Jocks have beautiful, high-quality, and heavy-duty championship belts, rings, trophies, and so much more for all your fantasy sports needs.
The trophy's 12 feet high, and it is glorious.
Football, baseball, hoops, you name it, they have it. Plus, they have awesome draft kits and party supplies to make all your preseason activities the envy of everyone. If your league needs a ring, belt, or trophy, or you want to upgrade what you already have, there's literally only one place to go. If you're going to be a fantasy jock, do it right.
It's mine, the most magnificent belt ever created, and it's mine.
With America's fantasy sports superstore, fantasyjocks.com. Football season is party season at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. And no matter who you root for, everyone wins at Harry Buffalo. Every Saturday is Coors Light College Football Saturday with $6 pitchers, 4 bottles for $10, and the Buckeyes in full HD. Every Sunday, all the Browns action with Bud Light beer specials and $10 hair of the dog pitchers.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Plus, every Monday night, catch the Monday Night Football action with some of your favorite Browns players. Football season is most definitely party season, and your headquarters is Harry Buffalo North Olmsted all winter long. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd. Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Fantasy Jocks. Visit fantasyjocks.com, your fantasy sports superstore. Championship belts, rings, trophies, and more.
News break.
Good morning, I'm Bob Picozzi, but can you put the toothpaste back in the tube? One day after embattled coach George Karl convinced general manager Vlade Divac to let him keep his job, the Sacramento Kings will play the 76ers in Philadelphia tonight, but ESPN NBA insider Mark Stein remains skeptical.
They just look listless. They don't look like a team responding to the coach, so I'm frankly surprised that they can take this step and try to patch this thing together. I mean, how are the players going to respond? I think that's the big question from here.
The Kings have lost 4 straight in 8 of their last 9. At 27-27, Houston is in 8th place in the NBA West, only a half game ahead of Portland in the battle for the final playoff spot in the conference. The Rockets visit the Blazers tonight, 10:30 Eastern time on ESPN. Rams wide receiver Stedman Bailey, who was shot in the head twice in November, says he intends to return to the NFL and hopes it's with the Rams. He acknowledges his neurosurgeon has warned him the gunshot wounds would make playing football again an elevated risk. And 2 Kenyan athletes serving a 4-year ban for doping have told the AP the CEO of Athletics Kenya asked them for $48,000 to reduce their suspension.
Valentine's is here. Surprise her with roses from 1-800-Flowers and set the mood for a great weekend. Order 1 dozen assorted roses plus a vase for just $29.99 or double it for only $10 more. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com.
This is Josh Tomlin of Cleveland Indians, and you're listening to the Sports Fix.
Now, back to the Sports Fix, your choice for intelligent talk.
I don't know what I was thinking there. Hold on a second. That's just not gangster enough to come back from that. Stop. Let's hold up. Wait a minute. Let's put some gangster in it. We got to come back a little more fired up than that. I mean, no offense, Mrs. Robinson, but let's get fired up. There we go. Let's get fired up. Coming back from the break. Welcome back into the Sports Fix. I'm a disco guy too, but I was like, oh, J-Rocc, what were you doing, man? You picked the wrong song. Look, there we go. The Ultimate Warrior. Get it pumping up here as we get back. Welcome into the Sports Fix. J-Rocc with you. We're going to pump it up. Dan Wismar is on the hotline. Going to join me here in just a moment. Going to roll back into where we started, talking some football. I'm sure we'll get into the Browns a little bit. Super Bowl, we got some Cavs. Kobe Bryant, final trip to Cleveland here as he continues his farewell tour around the NBA. Cavs saying farewell to the first half, at least the schedule-wise first half before the All-Star break tonight as well. We're going to do all that. You guys, phones are now closed. Thanks to LG for the call earlier. We'll hit them later. Hit us up on social media if you can't get through. Facebook.com/TheSportsFix. Twitter @TheSportsFixCLE. Tweet me directly @J-Rocc Daddy, all one word. Instagram me @J-Rocc Daddy. Email us, thesportsfix at AOL.com. Let's hit these phone lines up. Where's he at? The man. He's like our version of the Ultimate Warrior. He's running through and hitting the ropes now. My man, Dan Wismar. How you doing, my man?
Hey, J-Rocc. How are you doing today?
Fantastic, man. Getting back at it here. I'll tell you what, I didn't even bother explaining it at the beginning of the show. We couldn't have done Monday had I not felt like I was coming out of a wrestling coma as it is. I literally put like 45 minutes of ring time in on Saturday night, but I wasn't just physically beat up. I had yelled so much Saturday night that I could not talk. I mean, you wouldn't have been able to understand every third word coming out of my mouth. So that's why I hit you up. I said, Dan, not a chance. Just enjoy it, and we'll get back on Wednesday because I was dead to the world. I barely made it through the end of that Super Bowl, man. I mean, it took everything I had to pull through that. How about you? How did you enjoy Super Bowl 50?
Well, I found that, what we talk a lot of times, J-Rocc, about when you don't necessarily have a strong rooting interest before the game starts, that you start watching and you invariably find yourself unconsciously rooting for one team or the other.
Right.
I found myself rooting for the Broncos kind of right from the get-go. Kind of wanted to see the storybook ending, and we ended up actually seeing that. The game, I think most people would admit, was kind of a dog. It's not, when you have Denver going 11 or 12 consecutive third down conversion failures, those kinds of things. I mean, I don't think any quarterback has ever had that bad a game in a Super Bowl and won. But in fact, it got to the end where, even the Denver fans were saying, don't throw the ball, don't throw the ball. They were so afraid that something was going to happen, and Peyton did throw that one kind of brainless interception, but and then the last possession they had, 3 running plays, really no hope, not even a goal of picking up a first down. It's let's run 3 plays, make them use a couple of their timeouts, and we'll punt. And they did that. But in general, I'm glad it worked out the way it did. The Denver plan to not only pressure Cam Newton, but to make Cam Newton throw the ball as opposed to running the ball worked like a charm, because Newton was high with several throws and inaccurate with a few others, and he had a couple of successes, but boy, they beat him up and sacked him 5 times and knocked him down 5 more, and it was just a humbling experience for the young man. And unfortunately, he didn't handle it real well afterwards. But we can talk about that a little bit more. But in general, I was glad to see Peyton go out on top. I don't have the same intense hatred for the Denver Broncos a lot of my fellow Browns fans have. But that's neither here nor there. But John Elway, everybody at Peyton, those guys gracious in victory, and kind of by contrast, Cam not so much on the other side.
Yeah, and I had purposely saved that aspect of the conversation so I could get into it with you, but with the game itself, and I agree 100% about the game. I mean, that was definite to me. It was quite a sleeper, no pun intended, of a Super Bowl, man. And the commercials it all matched. The halftime show, the commercials, the game. It was just like For the 50th Super Bowl, it was the opposite of kind of what you thought it would be. You thought it would be, if nothing else, a lot of smoke and mirrors, if there wasn't even a lot of steak with the sizzle. But to me, the sizzle wasn't even all that. It was just kind of there. And I know I chalked that up during the game to the defensive play. And I wanted to ask you, before we roll into a different part of the conversation, Peyton Manning, him being clearly on the downside, we've all talked about that. He'd be the first one to tell you that he is, working through the backside of things here. I was really shocked, and I get wanting to take a step back and think about things, but I think it was so already thought about and talked about, and there was so much lead time into it about whether Peyton would play again after this. Honestly, my gut says that if he was going to call it a day, that was the spot to do it, win, lose, or draw after the game. And the fact that he didn't, it leads me to feel that he's going to talk himself into coming back for another season. And I'm not saying that's wrong, because I would never tell a guy when to, you got to decide when to end your career. But he had the storybook written, and now you're almost now taking a risk on yourself. You're gambling. Am I going to get a better ending than the one that I've got right now? But what does your gut tell you? Is he going to have a press conference in a week or two and say, I'm done? Or is he going to come back for another one? Because this defense can definitely make another run.
Well, it goes without saying that you and I have no idea what's in the man's head or his heart, but
right.
I do hope that the narrative that plays out is that he hangs it up. First of all, how could he possibly have a better ending than this?
Right.
He couldn't, and I think it's apparent that he's lost a lot, and I just think he's going to go ahead and retire. I think it was a classy thing for him not to do it immediately after the game. It would have put all the focus on him and detracted from the group that won the game, which was the guys on the other side of the ball.
Great
So
point.
I'd like to think that that's what he had in his mind, that he didn't want to hog the spotlight and detract from the team effort that won that football game. So that's what I hope happens, and I hope for his sake. And how could it be better? Super Bowl championship, 200th win. Everything all came together for him, even in a lackluster performance by him personally. So my gut tells me he's done, and he can do whatever he wants to do in football from now on, off the field. He can, half the league would love to bring him in as a front office person, and just for the PR value alone, even without whatever contributions he could make with his brain. So yeah, my gut says he's done, and he's just going to allow a little bit of time. And they had the parade, I guess, yesterday, and I think a few days will pass, and then he will announce his retirement. At least I kind of hope that's what happens, because it can't end any better.
Right, and that's a great point. I think you're 100% right. If he does retire, that'll probably be the words that he exactly uses to explain why he waited, because it would have made it all about Peyton Manning on that night instead of about the Broncos, instead of about Von Miller, the MVP, instead of about all of these different other storylines in the game, and that would be a classy thing. And that is something that a guy like Peyton Manning would take into consideration, knowing the ultimate professional he is when it comes to giving credit to teammates and all of that stuff. So that's an interesting point that a lot of people perhaps haven't looked at it as. It'll be interesting to see in the next few weeks if he does. I'm with you. Selfishly, of course, I'd love him to keep playing because he's Peyton Manning. But I'm with you. How can it be better? I mean, had you lost and you got that, we came so close, at least then you can go, okay, he wants one more shot at it. But you won. You told the story. You're going out as it can't be any better. I mean, and the pressure and all that comes along with the defense the next season, you got to think no matter how good you are, no matter how good your team are, the odds are 95-5 against you being able to match where you're at right now. It's just the perfect way to go out, and you've got to think he knows that. And we'll see, though, man.
Yeah.
I mean, again.
Yeah, that's right. And it may also be a consideration, Jerry, that Brock Osweiler's a free agent.
Right. They may have to.
It's hard to foresee. It's hard to foresee the Broncos letting him walk, even if Peyton were to come back. It's hard to see the Broncos letting Brock Osweiler walk. And I already saw the speculation, about, well, maybe Hugh Jackson can get Brock Osweiler in Cleveland.
Yeah, I saw that.
I've got to. I don't want him here, but I've got to believe that if the Broncos decided to let Brock Osweiler walk, they must feel that he's not the answer there. And if he's not the answer there, why in the world would he be the answer here?
Yeah.
And so that kind of talk has been bandied about, but certainly that's a consideration in their mind. If they sign him to a big money deal, they're going to want him to play, and he showed some ability and a pretty good arm and some good poise in the games that he played, and he helped get him there when Peyton was out. So that may be something that's a big part of what the Broncos' feeling is about it. But this isn't about the Broncos' feeling. This is about what Peyton wants to do, and he can do whatever he wants. And I just have a feeling he's going to step down because it's a perfect scenario for him. The other thing I wanted to get to about
I wanted
the
to ask
Super
you
Bowl,
something
Jerry.
real quick. Just because while we got Peyton, and I know that you've got there's a legendary status and stuff which makes this different, but is there any kind of scenario, and this wouldn't be team to quarterback saying, hey, here's what we want you to do, but could you see a situation where Peyton would stay on a season to back up Osweiler if he stayed, or does that leave the specter? Anyways, it's not a good situation probably, but to give yourself that transition, you know what I mean? Like, or is it disrespectful to even ask him? Like, he strikes me as the kind of guy, though, that would obviously put team before himself. Could there be a situation where there's a happy medium where they find a way to transition? I don't know. But then again, do you even want the specter of the guy looming over where you go, well, take him out and put Peyton back in, you know? But
I guess my short answer would be no.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is, first of all, and I'm not so worried about Peyton's legacy or Peyton's willingness to be a backup. But if I'm the Denver Broncos and Brock Osweiler is my starter, frankly, I don't want Peyton Manning as my backup. And
True.
You had him there for his guile and savvy and wisdom and experience, not so much certainly for his arm in these last several games or this last whole season or more. I don't know that that's what I want coming off my bench in the event that that Osweiler is injured or whatever. I just it's not so much about humbling Peyton and would he be willing to do that? Probably would be. It's just that I want a young, spry, strong-armed kid coming off my bench as my backup if I'm the Denver Broncos.
And I'm with you. I was more just thinking of it almost like having that guy that's still got maybe one or two games in the tank. He can't give you the whole season, but if you're serious about making a championship run and you've got a couple of, and obviously it would depend on who they would bring in as a backup or whatever, but a couple of lesser experienced quarterbacks guiding the helm, that's not a bad, in case of emergency, break the glass type of thing to try to salvage a championship run next year. That was
you might want to bring in a veteran, but you'd probably want a 30-year-old, not a 40-year-old. So that's
absolutely
the way I would be. So that's the way I would be looking at it if I were them. The other thing about the football game, there, wanted to mention.
Yeah.
Sometimes the Super Bowls, after all the hype, they really remind us that it really is just another football game, and just another NFL game, which follows the NFL pattern, and it's played with the same inconsistency of officiating, and it's played with the same things that make you have the love-hate relationship with the NFL all during the season. That and I don't even know how to really put that into words. And I don't really have a gripe about the officiating in the game, other than I might have ejected Aqib Talib for the flagrant face mask on Corey Brown. But I was actually in the minority of people who thought that the initial call on the incompletion before the strip sack fumble touchdown was a good call. I thought that when that receiver went to the ground, that the ball hit the ground and the ball shifted in his grasp, and that's usually the key to making a play be incomplete, is when the ball hits the ground, does it move? In other words, does it shift in the grasp? And then he rolled over with the ball pinned against his side with his elbow, and I just thought it was clearly an incompletion. The broadcasters and seemingly everybody on Twitter that was watching and people after the game were talking about what a terrible call that upholding the incompletion call was. I just saw it differently. I thought it was an incompletion all the way. But in other words, you're going through the game, and it's kind of a dog of a game, and we've all watched, if we're Browns fans, certainly lots of dog NFL games during the year that aren't particularly aesthetically pleasing. And it's just, like I said, the Super Bowl sometimes does bring you back down to earth and say, yeah, we hyped this game up a lot, and here it is, looks a lot like every other NFL game we see.
Absolutely, man. And it was just, as you said, a ho-hum affair. From the game to the commercials to the halftime show. I wasn't a fan of any of the above. I'm telling you, I think I can only remember off the top of my head even a couple of commercials from the game. That's how bad they were. Like, they weren't even bad. Bad ones you remember. Good ones you remember. I just don't remember them because they just weren't memorable, and I think that's the thing. Same thing with a lot of parts of that game. All right, let's hit the unspoken topic of the Super Bowl. Let's talk a little bit about Cam Newton. I'm curious where you come in on this thing, and I know everybody's got their opinions. I'm not going to sit here and slaughter this guy, and I'm also not going to sit here and go, oh, well, it's totally okay. Yes, perfect world. I absolutely would have liked to have seen him sit there and be the beacon of professionalism and answer questions, much like he did the following day after the game. He faced the media, and he did answer questions about his behavior the day before. That being said, as an athlete, and you guys just got to take that this is me. This isn't some gospel. This is my thing. I dig the fact that many people don't realize the aspect of having the opposing player in the room being interviewed at the same time. So you're literally sitting there moments after coming so close to something that you thought for sure. All these guys say, hey, God helped me win the Super Bowl. They all believe that it's their destiny that day to win that game. And Cam Newton, just like everybody else. So you're dealing with your own failures as a player. Then on top of that, you've got the deal that's going on in the corner of the room with the other player, and you're dealing with all of this. And I felt that actually Cam Newton could have been more unprofessional than he was. Yes, he was petulant. He cut it short and said, I'm not doing this. Would I have liked him to stay? Yes. Am I going to rake him against the coals for not doing it? No, because there's tons of guys who now people forget about that stuff. Isaiah Thomas is a Hall of Famer, and obviously he tainted his resume off the court with his stuff that he did in the front offices and the sexual harassment charges. But on the court, Hall of Famer. People today don't remember, Dan, you may remember the year that the Bulls finally defeated the Pistons after 4 straight years of being knocked out in the playoffs, and Isaiah Thomas got his troops to walk off the floor and skip the handshake and kind of be poor sports at the end of the game. And it was a big deal at the time. It's one of the reasons Isaiah Thomas and Michael Jordan never got along, one of many reasons. But point being is people don't talk about that now, about Isaiah Thomas on the court, but he did something. And there's hundreds of aspects like that. Peyton Manning didn't exactly take his first Super Bowl loss great either. So my thought is, yes, it could have been better. No, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't erase everything I thought Cam Newton had been doing, but it does. It obviously shows that he's human. But where are you at? Because to me, it's just not as big of a deal as some people made it out to be.
Yeah, I don't think it's that big a deal. I think what made it a little bit more hard to take was the fact that all the talk beforehand, all the bravado, all the, hey, you don't like how I act, too bad. If you don't like the way I act after I score, just go ahead and stop me then. You know, and all this sort of bravado and daring the Broncos to, you know, hey, either shut up or just stop me. And so they stopped him. Yep. And then after they stopped him, he didn't have the graciousness to acknowledge that. You don't have to like losing. And he came out yesterday with a tired old line about show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser.
Absolutely.
And I understand that. He's a competitor. He hates to lose. How does that differentiate him from every other athlete in the world? You know, obviously some more competitive than others. Some have more of that burning fire inside than others. But he acts as if he has more of it than anybody else, and therefore he has no obligation to show some humility or show some good graces in a loss. Now, he even came out yesterday, like you said, he didn't come out to apologize for what he had said. He came out to do the opposite of apologize for what he said. He came out to say, hey, man, I'm not going to change for you. And I think it is part of the conceit of the media that says you will come out here and you will be something that you're not for our benefit. You will come out and you will debase yourself and you will climb down off your high horse and you will be gracious in defeat and you will, congratulate the winners and blah, blah, blah. And Cam Newton basically said, I'm not here to please you. I'm going to double down on what I said. I am a bad loser. That's me. If you can't handle it, get over it. And so, to a certain degree, you have to sort of admire the spunk, even if you think that the guy conducted himself like a jerk on the day of the game. So, I'm not terribly upset at him. I like the fact that he does have that fire burning inside him, but don't pose as somebody who has so much of that fire burning inside him. And I'm such a great competitor, I'm such a lousy loser, that I'm incapable of showing some graciousness after a loss and acknowledging that, hey, I got beat, they outplayed us, they won the game hands down, fair and square. There was no, that you can do that, and that doesn't mean that you're not a competitor or whatever. If you acknowledge the winner, doesn't mean you're all of a sudden becoming a good loser. So I'm of two minds on it, frankly, but the fact that he came out the next day to double down, not to bend over, in effect, in front of the media, he basically showed the media, hey, look, you're expecting me to come out, be something that I'm not going to do it just for you. And so I think the media maybe needs to learn a lesson from that, too.
And you look at how old the kid is, too, and he still is. And, hey, you are what you are. You're a millionaire. You're getting paid high money, all of them. I mean, they get held to certain set of standards, and that is what it is. But I look at the age, and not just with him, with everybody. I mean, even when we're talking about the stupid stuff involving Johnny Manziel, not the serious stuff, you do chalk a lot of that up. And I think back to stuff I did when I was 20, not just stuff I did, but the things I thought when I was 24, 25, and then 10 years later, here looking after a decade later, you go, man, but like at the time, not only did I say it, I believed it, and you couldn't convince me that what I was saying was wrong. Now you look back and you go, man, like it wasn't just like the things I was doing I could have done differently. My thought process was all jacked up. I didn't even realize, like, I don't know. Anyways, you realize how clueless you really were to the real world. And I wonder if, I guess that's where we'll see the growth of a guy like Cam Newton. I wonder if, when he's leaving the NFL, if he does continue to grow, I would be willing to bet that this will go down as one of the regrets of his career, was the way he handled things there. So that's something to keep an eye on later. But again, I wish it could have been better, like I was saying, but it's not the end of the world. Not everybody has the same levels of maturity, the same levels of growth, all of that stuff. But as you said, the reason people were so hostile on the back end against him for it was because he was so out front with the arrogance and with the cockiness and all of that along the way, that there's a lot of people there happy to see you stumble. And then when you don't react to it better, boom, it's the double whammy. He definitely could have done better, but I've also seen guys do a whole lot worse as well. So you just hope that it's something that he can grow from. And if he doesn't, he's the one. It's his life. It's his situation. I mean, and I'm just curious about this, in the real world, how well Cam Newton deals with defeat in a Super Bowl affect any of us, anywhere, anybody? It doesn't even affect anybody whose name isn't Cam Newton. How he reacts after losing the Super Bowl doesn't do anything for anybody's life. So yes, it was important for a day, and now it's over. It is what it is. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, sure. And you talked about the times in your life where you screwed up, and I've certainly had plenty of those in my life. And after we did those screw-ups, and after our thought process was all jacked up, we didn't have to sit down under the lights in front of 100 people with cameras and microphones and questions asking us what the hell were we thinking about. We didn't have to do that. I think just the whole idea that these NFL players, after they play a game, they're forced by regulations and rules and traditions or whatever to have to sit down in front of media. And the media, by the way, can be incredibly stupid and dumb and thoughtless and insensitive and all the other things that we can call them. When they do confront you after you've just lost a game, it's tough. It's got to be tough. And you know that not only were 100 million people watching you play the game, but now 100 million people are going to be listening to every syllable you have to say afterwards and critiquing you on it. So put yourself in those shoes after you've failed at something that you have worked your whole life to get to, and then critique Cam Newton for how he reacted. So again, I'm able to see both sides of it, I think, and I wish that NFL players weren't forced to face the media after every single game and every single event like that. Maybe the Super Bowl is a different animal, but frankly, I think there's too much scrutiny and too much ability for access for the media to players, especially immediately after the game is over.
Yeah, they could extend the cooling off period, at least, I think, give guys more than 10 or 15 minutes, whatever it is that they give guys after the game. I mean, you think about what it takes to get fired up, and it takes you more than 10, 15 minutes to get your blood pumping and get ready to play a football game, let alone 60 minutes or, in real world time, 2-3 hours of pretty high testosterone and the stakes and the storylines of a football game back and forth, all the ebb and flow. And then, hey, you got 10 minutes to calm down before you've got to go sit and talk to the media. I mean, again, you get paid a lot of money, and unfortunately, or whatever, however you want to look at it, that's part of your responsibilities that comes with it. But yeah, I've often thought that perhaps they could extend that cooling out period after game, especially football. I think it's a little different. Basketball, there's 82 of them, baseball, 162 of them. It's a lot easier for a guy to not be so hot after 10 or 15 minutes, realizing we play another game tomorrow. Football, there's so much hype into one game, plus it's much more of an overall physical, testosterone, manly type of atmosphere that the cooling period should be. I believe the cooling period's like the same after an NBA game as it is after an NFL game, which, if you think about it, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. They should perhaps have a little bit more. Either way, it is what it is. Super Bowl's in the books. Off season has officially begun. Let's you and I shift over a little bit before we get into some other stuff. While we're on the gridiron, the Browns offseason now comes into spotlight. I'm sure you heard LG called in earlier. The Pilot Flying J stuff just kind of leaves a new specter over the Browns that you don't even really know how it's going to play itself out yet. But now that looms over top of all kinds of stormy waters that the team is trying to navigate through to get itself ready for a draft in an off season.
Yeah, Jerry, and I heard LG's call, and I hadn't read anything about the new indictment until I heard that conversation. I immediately brought it up on my screen. I read the Cleveland.com story, and to be honest with you, I've had a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach ever since I read it. I mean, while I've been on the phone with you talking about other stuff, especially when you get down to the Cleveland.com story and you get down to the last couple paragraphs where Freeman, the woman vice president, former VP of sales, who is one of the indicted people in this thing, in the new indictment, basically says, in as many words, Haslam knew.
Yeah.
He basically says when he bought the airplane off the client that needed to get unload an airplane, he called Haslam, he says, in an affidavit from 3 years ago and said, I told him I got busted at Western Express. He is quoted in the affidavit as saying, Haslam knew all along that I was cost-plussing this guy. He knew it all along, loved it. We were making $450,000 a month on him, end quote. That's
damning right there, man.
That just gives me the creeps. That just tells me that the worst is yet to come for the Cleveland Browns and Jimmy Haslam, and that just makes me almost physically ill when I think about it, because it's the last thing in the world that this, beleaguered franchise needs is to have it. And that the national media, as soon as they get wind of this, and obviously they've been operating under the assumption that Jimmy Haslam is a crook all along without evidence. Now there's evidence,
right?
It's just heartbreaking to me that the Cleveland Browns, who don't deserve this, are going to be having to deal with the idea, the fact that their owner, and I've joked and written and accused him, just basically, made the joke about, Jimmy's got two business enterprises. One of them admitted to screwing over their customers, and the other one is a chain of truck stops.
Right, right.
You have to, laugh in the face of some of this, but now it looks as though it's going to get worse before it gets better, and that just makes me ill.
All right, we're going to recap this for a lot of people probably out there not sure what we're even talking about. You're listening to the Sports Fix. We just crossed over the top of the hour. J-Rocc here. Dan Wismar joining me from Everybody Hates Cleveland. And as we just breached over into the topic of the Browns, we're talking about the newest revelations. And really, this has just sprung up in the last 12 16, 18 hours and started to hit the news cycle. As Dan said, it hasn't even launched. It's just getting out there on all of the national news cycles. But 8 new indictments against Pilot Flying J, and these are the most damning things yet against Jimmy Haslam, because you've now got several guys. You've got the president, you've got the vice president of sales, you've got the vice president of national sales. All 3 of these guys directly answered to Jimmy Haslam. They were his straight subordinates underneath. They all work together. As Dan referenced, there's a Cleveland.com article. There's Pro Football Talk's got a piece. There's pieces out all over now starting to get out that start to read into the affidavit what's in there. But when you see this before, as Dan said, we all joked that he was Crooked Jimmy and all this and nudge, nudge, wink, wink. There was never the smoking gun. There was never somebody yet who had been willing to put pen to paper and say Jimmy knew, here's what he knew, here's the paper trail, etc. Now we're staring down the barrel of exactly that. And if you think it's not going to happen, you're nuts. In the next few months, these guys are going to roll. They're going to fill out affidavits. They're going to testify to these things against Jimmy Haslam in order to save their own hide. These guys are facing decades and decades of prison time. They are not taking the bullet for Jimmy Haslam, and the worst is yet to come for Jimmy Haslam. Jimmy tried to wrap that thing up, and here's the other thing. Look at it like a RICO trial, like when they go after mobsters or whatever. Usually it's all wrapped up together. The fact that they did all the pleading guilty and tried to tie up all that part of the investigation, was it a year ago or whatever, now they come back. That says to me that they knew there was more, and they're going to continue to go to the head of the snake, and that is Jimmy Haslam. And that means that, like you said, now you've got proof. Now you know that the guy that runs this team is willing to rob and steal and cheat and rip people off. And then it puts the way the Browns have been run in a different light. And like you and I say, Jimmy Haslam has not owned the Browns since 1999. They had a good way of stinking on their own well before Jimmy Haslam bought them. But you look at the things. You look at how the team, look at how things were starting to get together, and they tore the team apart to make a 3-ring circus out of it to sell some tickets and some jerseys and some things. You look at the clown show atmosphere, and you look at it looks differently. At one point, it looks like you've got a bunch of idiots that just don't know what you're doing. Then when you add the real life aspect of criminal thoughts and con man and all that stuff, then it starts to look malicious. Then you start to go, man, it's not a joke. They really were like, oh, who cares? They're going to buy the tickets anyway. Oh, who cares? They're going to buy the jerseys anyway. I'm going to say something bold, Dan. I believe that within 12 months from this conversation, the Browns are temporarily owned by the NFL, and we are in the process of finding a new owner for the Cleveland Browns. I think that as soon as this thing turns really nasty on Jimmy Haslam, the NFL is going to step in and take this team, put it into a receivership, and they're going to quickly expedite Jimmy Haslam from the NFL.
I think that's a very plausible scenario to talk about right now, Jerry, unfortunately. I think the NFL will have to do something. And like you say, they've been working their way up. They got, I think, confessions and guilty pleas out of 10, 15 lower-level people. Now they have worked their way up after those guilty pleas to now where they prepared indictments against 8 upper-ups, presidents, vice presidents, et cetera. And they're continuing to work their way up, like you say. I see no way now that Haslam isn't indicted. He ultimately is the target here, and the NFL isn't going to sit still for it. Beating up on the Browns is common practice in the NFL, and I think they're going to now feel very justified, and they will be justified, frankly. Now, as far as taking it in receivership, who knows how that will play out. But
right.
Could they force Jimmy Haslam to sell the team? Yes, they could.
Yep.
I don't know about, somehow Eddie DeBartolo was able to get out of his situation by transferring ownership to his sister, was it?
I believe that's what he did, yes.
And
yes.
That was the technicality that he was able to work out with the league to step aside and transfer ownership to a family member.
But you know what?
Jimmy will be allowed to do that with his wife or with
Look at the precedent,
else.
though. Since that happened with the Niners a few years back, now look at the Clippers that happened last year. The NBA has kind of now set the precedent of a league forcibly saying, nope, you're done. Here's what's happening. We found a buyer. We found a judge to agree to the sale, and we're forcing you out. That precedent may change things, not just for the Browns, but for sports in general now, because you now have a league that has shown you can forcibly take over a situation and get a guy out.
It's also not beyond the realm of possibility that the end result could be that the Browns leave Cleveland again. I don't think the NFL would want that.
I can't see that. No way.
I don't know. How do we know? If it's forced to find an owner, somebody ponies up $1 billion.
There's no way the league would take the team from Cleveland because the owner is a shyster. You know what? There's no way. That would be the utmost public relations blow up for the NFL. I could not possibly see that.
Well, in any event, we don't know how it'll play out, but it sure does look like Jimmy Haslam's days are numbered because, I like you say, I think the indictment of Jimmy Haslam is a matter of when and not if.
Yep.
And that, frankly, just makes me ill. Just makes me ill.
I agree. You guys go look it up for yourself if you haven't looked that stuff up, and you'll see this is now the smoking gun is now in position, and this is very strategically done. They're working their way up the ladder, and they're going to. And you know what? Now, in perspective, again, looking back to those settlements and the guilty pleas last year. The government's very smart with what they did. Now I can see the reason that they tied up the financial aspects and the reimbursement is because a guy like Jimmy Haslam, and I'm not saying that people wouldn't have gotten their money eventually, but how much faster did Pilot Flying J write the checks, and how much faster did Jimmy pay back all those reimbursements thinking that he was on the front end of a deal that was going to keep him out of jail? Of course, the checks are signed, everybody, and the government's smart because if you're already in prison, if you've already been indicted, you don't exactly race to start paying that reimbursement to people that you owe money to. So now they went and got a lot of the financial aspects reimbursed in the front end, and Jimmy's quickly signing these checks as fast as they give them to him because he's thinking that that's going to keep him out of prison. Now, here comes the other half of the hammer. No, we're not done. Now we're going to put you in jail too. So it's gonna come down. And what does it do to the Browns? I mean, how they're already having so much trouble as a franchise getting anything going. What does this do overall? Because if we're talking about it, everybody in that building on Lou Groza Boulevard knows it. They're talking about it. They're whispering about it. Hugh Jackson has to be going, what the hell did I just walk into? Within 2 weeks, 3 weeks of taking over this job, the quarterback has now been accused of a drastic assault, and he's just spiraling out of control, and now the owner is just a half a step away from the pokey. What in the world? I thought it was bad, but now it's already gotten worse.
Well, the shame of it is that, in Hugh Jackson, in the staff that they hired, the coaching staff, the front office staff,
there's potential.
There was really, for the first time, there was potential. There was hope in Cleveland for this team moving forward. Whether it's misplaced hope or not, time will tell. But certainly there was some hope generated by the fact of what everyone considered to be a smart coaching hire, and then some very deliberate, searching and the hiring of what, again, people across the country have said is a pretty good coaching staff. Now to have that hope just sort of undermined with this, which sort of calls the whole enterprise into question, really is just a shame. And like LG said, you got to feel bad for Hugh Jackson.
Yeah.
Because he walked into this unwittingly. Obviously, I'm sure he was aware of the problem with Pilot Flying J, but obviously this has got to have blindsided him and just kind of cut his legs out from under him, and that really is a shame.
And the Browns have that going on.
Like you say, though, like you say, though, Haslam has paid out now $85 million in settlements, and he's also paid the Justice Department $92 million.
Yes.
Presumably, as I understand it, to avoid charges against the corporation, according to this Cleveland.com piece.
Yep.
So this is, Pilot Flying J, presumably out of the woods, but Jimmy Haslam personally, not so much, not so fast, Jimmy. And obviously he hasn't been charged yet, but like you say, Mr. Freeman and Hazelwood and these guys are not going to go quietly into the night to prison.
I'm telling you, I'm a big Sopranos fan. If you guys are Sopranos fans out there, that was one of the best series ever. It reminds me of watching when the government finally moves in on the big mobster. They don't put him in prison right away. They squeeze him. They negotiate. They get him to give them millions and millions of dollars in assets to prolong their freedom, to avoid jail time. They squeeze everything out of them. Then they say, okay, we'll let your wife keep the house. We'll let your kid keep the tuition, and the rest of it goes to us, and now you go off to prison. And that's what it feels like. You're watching them just slowly close in, and if what he did is true, then you don't feel bad for him, and that's what a criminal gets. But while all that's going on, and as we mentioned, Hugh Jackson, then you got the whole Johnny Manziel wildfire continuing to go. It's beyond are we talking about this guy about football? I mean, the latest accusations, that alone would have been enough for you and I to talk about here on the show without the Pilot Flying J, without anything else. But that's gone from petulance, that's gone from alcoholism or spoiled brat or any of those little silly things. This is a real problem. Are you with me or no? I don't think the Browns have any decisions to make. I think ASAP the league is going to suspend this dude indefinitely, and he's going to have to begin the whole Ray Rice process of, if he wants to straighten his life out, start here. But I think he's just going to be blocked out from the league by the league, and I think it's going to be pretty quick. I thought LG's point was great, that they could look back at the thing in Avon and say, had we done something then, maybe this girl doesn't get beat up in Texas. So how do we not really put the hammer down now?
Well, you're right. I don't know about first of all, I am not critical at all of the Browns' handling of the Manziel situation. I think they've handled it admirably. On balance. Johnny Manziel's career is over. His NFL career is over, I believe. I kind of hope that just for satisfaction, if nothing else, that the Browns are able to act before the NFL acts and forces their hand. I'd like to see the Browns cut him at the earliest possible opportunity. They've already given all but said that that's exactly what they're going to do, even before this latest revelation about how he may have ruptured the girl's eardrum and a video surfacing of some of these encounters. So I think it's fair to say that John Manziel's NFL career is over, and it is my fond hope that he is punished to the full extent of the law for what he's done. You're right; it's well beyond any discussion about capability as a quarterback or football considerations. He has been guilty of a crime that, we place as a society right up there next to murder, and that is, assault and beating, especially of a woman. And so, what else is there to say other than let's let the legal system run its course. And I think that the NFL banning John Manziel from the NFL will be sort of like, overkill. Frankly, because there is no team in the NFL that would dare to sign this kid right now after the Browns inevitably cut him. If he can salvage a career in football, if and when, whenever he is done paying his debt to society for these crimes, then go play in Canada, go play in the Mexican Football League. Who knows? But you're never going to play in the NFL, I don't believe, and nor should you. And the presumption of innocence is something every American gets. But I think when there's video, like there was with Ray Rice, you bring up a good point, too, that the NFL would come under intense criticism, and they should, if they treat him any differently, any more leniently than they did Ray Rice, and they would be accused of there being a racial component to it. So I just think it's not that their hands are tied. They're gonna hopefully do the right thing. But I hope that the Browns get a chance to make their move as an organization in cutting him before the NFL steps in and says we're going to preempt everything by just banning you from the NFL.
No doubt at all, Dan. So that was pretty much the wrap up of that one, man, and put a little bow on some football talk for a minute. I mean, I guess here we'll start seeing, what is it, 3 weeks left, then the new league year starts. So with all of these other specters looming, I guess at some point here pretty soon the Browns will again resume actual football-related activities, free agent signings, things like that can begin, draft preparations. It would be a welcome distraction with all of the unwelcome distractions that are around this team right now.
Yes, it will, but until this ownership situation is resolved, and it's going to be a great big dark cloud hanging over the entire organization, and it is so sad because the clouds were finally starting to part just a little bit. At least we were seeing a little silver lining there, and cause for hope. And this really just makes everything cloud over again, and really just brings me right down.
I'm just gonna throw this out here, man. I was joking with somebody about this last night. You know who's gonna save the Browns? I'm telling you, LeBron James needs to buy the Browns. I think he's the only person with enough actual working capital to just pick up the phone and go, "Hey, Jimmy, let's make this thing happen, man." He always wanted to play football anyway. Maybe he can't play, but he can own the team, and then he can continue to be Cleveland's hero. And I'm just kidding. But if you're looking for a quick fix, there you go. That's the one guy I was thinking in my head with a buddy yesterday. They were like, well, who would even want the Browns? I don't know, but I know there's only a couple people that actually could, and LeBron's one of them. He could buy the squad, man. So who knows? Maybe his civic pride will kick in. Maybe Dan Gilbert will see the. You got to think just jumping ahead, you got to think finding a buyer for an NFL team in general is not hard, and for the Cleveland Browns would be literally the opposite of impossible. It would be so easy you would have to find the best candidate out of all the people that do, because they see, and like my buddy Ray Rowe used to say, he goes, how could you fault a businessman for jumping over himself to buy an unsinkable asset? That is what the Cleveland Browns are. They are one of the most unsinkable assets in sports. They make you money when they're not doing good. It can only be imagined the amount of money that they could make you if things were doing good. So you got to think there would be no shortage, joking about LeBron, but you got to think there would be no shortage of contenders and possible buyers that could be done in short order. It didn't take very long for Jimmy Haslam to get matched up with Lerner.
That's true, and it's the nature of the NFL franchise that it's a fraternity that's set up to make everybody money, no matter how good or bad you are. So yes, that is absolutely true. As far as how hard would it be to find a buyer, there's not a whole lot of people walking around. Necessarily in Cleveland, at least,
right?
That have $1 billion in their hip pocket. But then again, Jimmy Haslam wasn't in Cleveland either, so they didn't find him looking in University Heights. So yeah, you're right. I'm sure there would be a whole bunch of people that would love to step forward and join the NFL fraternity of 32 owners who have a literal cash machine that will not allow them to lose money no matter how inept they are.
And Dan, here's something that you and I could just talk about later, but how a league that has FBI and like serious hardcore police people in their security department and their investigative department, I mean, they've got people that are connected all the way up to the freaking Secret Service,
Yes,
and
they do, Louis Marletti.
Right. How do you vet a guy and not pick up any signs? I mean, what did Jimmy didn't own the Browns a year before the first inklings of the Pilot Flying J stuff came out. So if it was already bubbling to the surface there, how could your super high qualified staff of people whose entire job it is to vet billionaires who want to join your exclusive club of 32, how could they come up with nothing? And then this all drops so quickly after the guy buys the team.
Yeah, I guess we could chalk it up to the Cleveland curse, I suppose, if you're inclined that way.
But I mean, how the NFL fail as a total?
This thing was below the surface. This thing didn't break until it broke, and you can't expect that someone could have anticipated it. It's not the kind of thing that it's the internal workings of a corporation that's a private group and privately held, and I don't see how it could have been foreseen. And like I said, it didn't break till it broke, and I don't know how you could have foreseen it.
Can't wait to see how this thing plays out, Cleveland. And meanwhile, the Browns are going to be on the clock here with the number 2 pick in the draft. And God, it would be such a Cleveland story, Dan, years from now for us to go, well, the Browns almost had a chance to turn things around back in 2016. And then the skies opened and they ate Jimmy Haslam alive, and Johnny Manziel did his thing. And next thing you know, the Browns ended up picking, an obscure offensive lineman with the number 2 pick in the draft, and so on.
And he broke his leg in training camp.
He broke his leg in training camp, and and so on and so forth. And then Brian Hoyer wins the Super Bowl. Whatever, you know how it goes. Life is what it is, guys. It is. Hey, here's a silver lining, cats. 5 days from now, by the time Dan and I talk again, spring training will be underway for the Indians as finally the trucks went down, and we've got pitchers and catchers reporting, and at least you wouldn't know it outside my window, but the sure signs of spring have begun. And I think, March 4th is the first preseason, or March 1st, and then April 4th is the season opener. So we are at least now beginning the path to baseball.
I cannot wait, J-Rocc. Just reading this morning some speculation about a couple of these free agents who are still out there. Most, prominently Dexter Fowler.
Yeah.
August Fagerstrom was writing this morning and about how it appears that maybe Fowler could be had for 2 years and $20 million. And my friend Adam Burke from the Cleveland fan days responding to that by saying that certainly if that's the case, there's no reason whatsoever that the Indians should not be in that line, ready to talk to the agent for Dexter Fowler about 2 years and $20 million. And yes, that would mean giving up their first-round draft pick, and so what? Let's go ahead and do that if we can solidify this team's outfield and their power projection and their offense for 2 years and $20 million for a Dexter Fowler. So, I hope that there is still at least one semi-major, if not major, move left by the front office before we go to spring training. Or frankly, I don't care if it waits till spring training's half over or all over and we're breaking camp to come to Cleveland. If they can pull off a move like that to help this outfield and to help this offense. So still encouraged that hopefully this front office isn't done putting this roster together yet.
And they did make a move the other day as the trucks left. They signed Craig Stammen, who had last played for the Washington Nationals, another pitcher to go into that bullpen as they kind of rebolster things, trying to put a pen together for this year. I don't know how much you know about him. I was checking him out. He's played, 7 seasons for the Nationals, all in the National League for Washington. And he was moved out of the way there as they overhaul their bullpen. What do you think of him? I mean, he's a strikeout guy. I think his strikeouts to walks is about 2.5 to 1 or so. He's got the makeup of the kind of guy that the Tribe likes in their pen. He's a big guy, 6'4", 230, big right arm. So I don't know how much you know about him, but you think he's got the ability to jump into this bullpen and help strengthen things for this team?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I've been in favor of adding, right-handed, depth in that bullpen all along. I really don't want to go into this season relying on Brian Shaw to be my 8th inning guy. I'd like to see some other options come up. I hope Austin Adams can take a step up. This Stammen is, I read that he wasn't necessarily a big power guy, that he was more of a sinker ball guy and a ground ball thrower. I mean, he can be a big guy and still be
absolutely.
A sinker baller. So that's really about all I've read about him. Obviously, like you, saw some of the stats and some of the numbers, but my understanding was that he's really more of a ground ball thrower and a guy that's going to keep the ball down and throw a lot of ground balls.
In the middle part of his career, his wins above replacement for some guys that get into that was really strong. 2012, 2013, Very strong. He was two. Matter of fact, his WAR was 2 back in 2012, which is a good separation from the guy who would normally take your spot. But yeah, it's depth, and it's another guy. And I agree. I read as well in the scouting report, throws that hard sinker ball, kind of like a Justin Masterson, kind of as far as that, getting a lot of the ground ball outs. And that was a guy that was a big guy, but he relied a lot on that too. And it's just a minor league deal, so it's another one of those doesn't really put a lot of risk. What was the article I was reading somewhere? One of the articles that I read just about the Indians over the weekend, they had a line in it joking about seems like they've invited a few hundred players to camp so far. It does seem like the Tribe's got 40, 50 spring training invitees coming in this year. They've got a lot of guys coming in, which I get it. When you're looking for just 1 or 2 that are going to have that true bounce back season, then you bring in 20 or 30 of these guys to look for them, because it really is the needle in the haystack.
That's true, and bullpens are so ethereal year to year. Really, my concern now, and really has to be the concern of the club, is that you don't really have a proven left-handed reliever, a left-on-left guy. You went into last season, you had basically 3 of them. You had Sapchinski and Crockett and Hagedorn, and 2 of those 3 are gone.
Yep.
So you're bringing back Kyle Crockett, and you've got Giovanni Soto, and you've got some other people that throw from the left side, and you signed Joe Thatcher and some other guys. But you're a lot less unsure of things, a lot more unsure of things, I should say, from the left side in the bullpen than you are from the right. And you're bringing back your closer, and you're bringing back Shaw, and you're bringing back McAllister, and you're bringing back your other righties, Austin Adams. But a lot more question marks really on the left-handed reliever side.
I mean, like you brought up at the beginning of this, talking about there may still be a move or 2 left in the pipe, and we brought that up last week too. If not, I mean, where are you at heading into spring training with these Indians? Because unfortunately, yeah, they made a few changes, and I like picking up Napoli. I like Davis as a fill-in, but you've got a lot of the team that ended last season, which for the 3rd year in a row, basically, they're going to bring it back and say, hey, we think we added a couple of pieces to this team, but we think these guys are good enough. What are your thoughts on that now, heading into like a 3rd straight season of kind of basically the same core group of guys with just a couple of different guys sprinkled in?
I am looking at it as a team that is going to win between 80 and 85 games.
Yep.
And that probably is not going to be enough to win the division. I look at the Tigers' everyday lineup, and granted, I think the Tigers would gladly swap starting pitching staffs with us, and they probably would swap bullpens with us. But their day-to-day lineup, 1 through 9, is scary. And, they had a miserable year last year. Their owner went out and signed a bunch of people. The White Sox are being very, very aggressive in signing free agents and people, and the Royals are just the world champs. So I don't go into the season with a whole lot of optimism about the Tribe winning more than 82, 83, 84 ball games as currently constituted. So I'm just, granted, the team was playing better at the end of last year. It's been the story of Terry Francona's tenure. Slow start, fast finish, and scraping to get over 500. I don't see that they've done a lot to change that outlook for 2016.
No, and especially the lack of urgency when, as you mentioned, you only happen to have the world champion in your division. You've only got the big spending Tigers in your division. I mean, we saw the White Sox began their process of re-putting things together. I mean, hey.
And, of course, last year we thought that 4 out of 5 teams had a chance, and the only team that didn't have a chance was the Minnesota Twins. All they did is come out and play great baseball all year long with a very, very young team. Finished second in the division ahead of us and the Tigers and the White Sox. And so I don't know how you count them out, because they're just going to get better as they get mature.
I agree with you, man. And it will be interesting in the next couple of weeks to see. Tribe is not against. They have done it before, grabbing somebody here late heading into camp. That'd be Nightman Fowler. They need a piece. They need a piece that brings this thing together, and then you could see how it connects. But otherwise, like you said, if this is what it is going in, it's the exact same thing. Hey, we finished strong, and as long as these guys start this way now, we've got it figured out. But 3 years in a row of that same thing, and then the slow start, and then the good second half, and then we fall a few games short, and we go, okay, we're going to go get them again next year. Even the most optimistic of us, you get tired of that story after a while.
Yes, you do. And, this year, maybe this year Bradley Zimmer will be the Francisco Lindor of 2016. We've got some kids that are ready to come up. We've got better pitching depth, starting pitching depth, I think, than we've had in the past. Even though last year, this time we were congratulating ourselves on all our starting pitching depth. Right. And by the by the 1st of May, we were looking around for somebody to start on the 5th day. But sometimes you just have to remember, hey, wasn't I saying the same thing last season?
It's not Groundhog's Day.
Sure enough, I was. But
yeah.
So my optimism is tempered a little bit this time around.
See, so if you're looking for glass half empty, glass half full, at least the Browns always give you a different drama. The Indians repeat the drama of the year as every year comes back around. It's like, like when you got that movie that plays, like back in the day, every year they'd put Roots on, or every Christmas they'd put The Christmas Story on for 24 hours. About every December through February, the Indians put the same movie on the last couple of years. At least the Indians or the Browns give you a different complete debacle every time, so it's fresh stuff to talk about. And I hope I'm wrong. Look, man, if the Indians don't sign anybody else, I hope that they do bounce back. I hope that they start this season like they did last season. But that's all we're doing is hoping. That's all we're doing is hoping, and then they've got to go out there and do it, and we're just doing the same thing. We're all Bill Murray here, man, and Sonny and Cher just keep playing on the radio. So
that's right. We've got, but on the upside though, we've got a new scoreboard.
We do have a new scoreboard. We may not need to click over the
and
runs.
We've got some more, amenities for
hot dogs
out there behind
hot
the plate.
Dogs.
That's right. So anyway, we got that to look forward to. My tickets are all paid for. I'm ready to go. I got 16 games worth. I got my 1/5 of a season ticket package that our guys buy every year, and I'm in again. I'm all in. So what can I say?
All in. Hey, that's a perfect segue. Cavs used that catchphrase last year. Speaking of a hot ticket, I know obviously sold out here tonight, and a hot ticket for sure is the Cavs and the Lakers, because Kobe Bryant going around on his retirement tour. This is his one and only stop in Cleveland for the season. Kobe Bryant's final appearance playing against the Cavaliers, sure to be a hot ticket against basketball fans. I saw the story making the rounds here this morning about, I guess back in 2007, there was a phone call between the Lakers and the Cavaliers with a potential trade. It was the Lakers, actually, that called the Cavs back in 2007 and pitched the possibility of a blockbuster trade, trading Kobe Bryant, who was in the prime of his career at that point in time, for LeBron James, who would have only been in his, fourth season in the NBA at that point in time?
03 was his rookie year, so yeah.
Yeah, it would have been he would have been 4 years into the league, heading into year number 5, and that was the year that the Cavs ended up making the run to the finals, was in 2007. And
right.
The Lakers made a call to the Cavaliers and talked about it. Like I said, Kobe was in his real peak, I guess, at that point, just beginning the way down. So clearly you were trading a superstar at their peak for one that may be a few years behind, but he will obviously surpass that peak for the next 10 years beyond that. And it was Kobe that put the squash on it. From everything that I've read about reports on it, he just said he was not going to approve of a trade to the Cavaliers. He said he had a no trade clause. He wasn't interested in it. Plus, he wanted to prove he was dead set on proving that he could win in LA without Shaq. There was no way, even if it was a great trade, there was no way Kobe was going to let the Lakers trade him, because that would have been capitulating that I can't win without Shaq.
Yeah, that's interesting. I saw that same article this morning on ESPN about that deal. I didn't really dig in and read it all, but yeah, certainly you got to, in retrospect, you got to be glad that we didn't do that deal.
I mean, think about how history would have changed. Kobe's exact words was, "I would not approve the trade." He said he literally was only willing to go to Chicago, the Spurs, or Phoenix at the time of that trade. And you got to realize that's 2007, so those teams were in a different place back then. But imagine how history had changed had the Cavaliers woke up that morning and said, "You know what? We'll take that trade. We'll trade you LeBron James for Kobe Bryant." Like, imagine the reverberations that would have been felt from a move like that. You would have moved the youngest talent in the NBA and the future leader as far as marketing and merchandising to the biggest market in the beginning parts of his career. You would have moved Kobe. That would have been unheard of as well for a star at that level to accept a trade to Cleveland, especially considering that the most attractive part of the Cavaliers was being sent to L.A. in the trade. That would have been a hell of a history-making thing had it happened to go down.
Yeah, it would have, and like I said, I'm glad it didn't.
Me too.
I cannot even imagine Kobe Bryant putting the Cavaliers team with Anderson Varejao and a bunch of other no names on his back and carrying them to the NBA Finals like LeBron did that year. It's just inconceivable that could have possibly happened. So forget about 2007. I mean, even just, I don't think Kobe Bryant is half the player LeBron is. Great player, but he's not the complete player that LeBron is. And it would have been a dumb deal at the time. I'm glad it didn't happen. So
for sure. NBA history is full of that. I've read on a lot of those where a player wouldn't agree to a trade, and you look at it afterwards, and he probably saved the franchise. You know, one time Jerry Krause was going to trade Scott. He had two different trades for Scottie Pippen, and I'm talking about, this is 1992 or whatever, the peak of Scottie Pippen's growth as one of the best players in the NBA. One time he was going to trade him for Xavier McDaniel, if you remember the X-Man, Xavier McDaniel.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And it was because he thought Xavier McDaniel could hit a better three-pointer than Scottie Pippen, who would go on to be one of the 50 greatest of all time. And here's one that'll make Cleveland fans laugh. He had a deal in stone on the table that Scottie Pippen refused to accept in the summer of 1997, heading into the final year of the three-peat. The Bulls were willing to trade Scottie Pippen heading into the final year of their three-peat because he was going to be a free agent the next year, and they refused to let him walk away without getting something for him. They were going to trade Scottie Pippen for Shawn Kemp. And it was only 6 months before the Cavs ended up trading for Shawn Kemp. So clearly Seattle was trying to get rid of that dude pretty quickly. But could you imagine that? Think about it now. Trading Scottie Pippen for Shawn Kemp 6 months before he put on 100 pounds and became the Shawn Kemp that came to Cleveland.
Yeah, that is crazy. Talk about, what's the old joke about what's the...
the best trades are the ones that never happen, that's for sure.
Talking about the confusion that Shawn Kemp goes through on Father's Day.
That's
neither here nor there. By the way, when LeBron got the triple-double the other day, I noticed the stats people were talking about how it was his 41st, I guess, or his 40th triple-double
first of the season,
in his career.
Wasn't that the first?
Season, which is a little surprising.
Yeah.
But they also showed there's only 6 players that have had more, and I thought it was, that surprised me. There's only 6 players that had more, and of course the list reads like the greatest players of all time.
Off the top of my head, let me think. I don't have this in front of me. Obviously, the Big O, Oscar Robertson's got to be on the list.
Who, by the way, had 41 in one season.
Yeah, he averaged a triple-double that season.
He averaged a triple-double for the season. But had 41 or something like that in one year. So
Who else would have been on
he's got like 181.
Larry Bird?
Bird is on the list, yeah.
Okay, Larry Bird.
He's I believe, 3rd or 4th on that list, though.
Man, who else? I'm going to kick myself if I don't think of everybody.
Well, if you think of Bird, you think of the other one.
Oh man! Well, Magic, of course.
Magic
Johnson,
Magic is number 2.
So you got Magic, you got Bird.
130 some, only about 45 short of Oscar Robertson.
All right, who else is on the list? Who's the other guys?
Wilt is 3rd.
Wilt Chamberlain. See, I wasn't sure if he had the assists. I knew he would have been there otherwise. Okay.
Yeah, and then I believe Bird is 4th. Either Bird is 4th or Jason Kidd is 4th.
Jason Kidd. Yep.
They were 4 and 5. So there's 5, and you would never guess the 6th guy in a million years. It was Fat Lever.
Oh, he played for the Sixers, right?
Yeah, Lafayette Lever. I think he played for Denver also.
Yeah,
I'm not
okay.
exactly sure. But, Fat Lever is the guy that is next on the list before LeBron. LeBron is going to pass him. I think Fat Lever had 43 or something, and LeBron now has 40. So he's just a couple away from passing Fat Lever.
What's the number?
When you go down that list, Oscar, Magic, Wilt, Bird, Kidd, and then Fat Lever. It's like Fat Lever doesn't belong on the list, but he did have 40-some. So anyway, that's the next guy. But I just thought I'd bring that up because, first of all, Oscar Robertson's so far out ahead of everybody, he'll never be caught.
I was going to ask, what's his total? What is his total?
Like 181.
Oh, my goodness. LeBron would have to have a triple-double a game for the next 3 seasons to catch up to him.
Right, and then Magic is second. I think he's got, if I recall, I'm doing this from memory, but I think Magic 130-some, 138, something like that. And then Wilt, still over 100, but less than that. And then Bird and Kidd are both in double digits, but they're well ahead of the 6th place guy, Lever. But anyway, LeBron's got some work to do. But when you think about the Big O, who had 41 in one season, that's a mind blower right there.
And that's why, and this is not a knock on LeBron, but it's a good way to bring this up. That's why I always yell at people, whether they're talking about LeBron James or whoever, about not keeping history and things in context when people are so quick to throw out greatest player of all time. They used to do it all the time with me with LeBron, and I would say, no, I'll give you top 10. I mean, we can have arguments about where you put him on the list, and those numbers you just gave, that gives a perfect perspective. LeBron James is known as the greatest player of this generation, the king of the triple-doubles. He has as many triple-doubles in his career, 13 years, as Oscar Robertson got in one season. The best LeBron can finish is probably 4th on the all-time list of career triple-doubles because, as you said, the other guys are so far out in front. And that's that perspective because, cats will sit there and quickly move the modern guys up to the top of the list. And I'm like, I don't think you realize just how deep that list is, I mean, at the time LeBron was in Miami, people would tell me he's the greatest player of all time. And I'd say, I don't care if he wins a ring this year or not. I wouldn't even put him top 20 on the list because here's 20 guys right off the top of my head. Tell me he's better than these guys. Now, you're talking about the best of the best. You're talking about the best 20 or 30 out of thousands that ever played. But modern fans and even athletes have such a short memory when it comes to the history. And then when you hear numbers like that, you go, holy crap. I mean, any young guy, that'll put into perspective the fact that the king of the modern era triple-double, Mr. Triple-Double, LeBron James, and he's got as many in his whole career as Oscar Robertson got in one season.
Yeah, and the other, it's not like triple doubles is the be all end all either. But even
no.
Even when you look at scoring, again, LeBron's been in the league 13 seasons, and he just became the 17th highest scoring player of all time. So as much as he's been a scorer in his career and a dominant player, he's played 13 years and he's not in the top 15 in points yet. So. Yeah, let's hold off on sculpting the statue just yet of the greatest of all time.
I mean, he's definitely going to be on the list in the conversation when it's done.
Conversation, no doubt.
Yeah,
it's a lot tougher to get triple double in today's league, I'm sure, than it was in the early '60s when Oscar Robertson was doing it in a whole different kind of an NBA. But no slouch. There's still lots of people that saw him play, and I had a opportunity one time to see him play at Cleveland Arena when the Cincinnati Royals used to play 8 or 10 games a year at the Cleveland Arena. And I remember my dad taking me down to see him when I was probably 10 or 11 years old. But
I mean, imagine
in any event, he was an unbelievable player.
Imagine averaging a triple-double for the season. By the way, Charles in the chat room asked where Michael Jordan is on that list. He's actually 10th on the list of triple-doubles. Michael Jordan has 28 triple-doubles in his career. His best season, as far as the closest to a triple-double season, was 32 points per game, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists per game. That was the best overall season there Michael Jordan had, and so there you go, 10th on the list. He had 28 all-time triple-doubles. Actually, what's more surprising to me is number 9 on the list, Grant Hill, he's got 29. So even as injury plagued, and that'll show you how tantalizing the talent of Grant Hill is, because his career was injury plagued. He's definitely considered a guy who was cut short, and he was still able to finish 9th on the list even with all of that. Havlicek is only one triple-double ahead of him, 8th on the list. So you got some of the greats of the greats there. But that's interesting about Grant Hill. Imagine what he could have been had his feet and his injuries not betrayed him.
Yeah, that's true. He did suffer a lot of injuries.
He was great in college. Grant Hill, to me, was going to be one of the next stars of the league, and he could just never get it going.
Exactly. Speaking of the Cavs, too, Jerry, I'm still hurting from Friday night.
Man, how do you lose that one at home?
That was just incredible. I mean, when you're up, first of all, the idiotic foul by J.R. Smith.
J.R. Smith,
and
yes.
Obviously, they're not in the game if J.R. Smith doesn't hit 5 or 6 threes. But still, when he fouled Eric Turner going in there and with 3.5 seconds to go or whatever, to get them within 2, and then of course he misses the free throw, and Mozgov and LeBron between them can't squeeze the rebound. You just knew that it was setting up for a disaster, and sure enough, it did. But that one really, really hurt, especially because it gave the Celtics some hope. And Celtics are, by the way, surprisingly, they're in the number 3 spot right now in the East. One thing
Stevens has them playing great, man. They're playing excellent.
That is a damn good defensive basketball team.
Yeah.
I mean, Brad Stevens has those guys playing great defense. They shut the Cavs down when it mattered. And that I came away from that game, just really impressed as hell with the kind of defense that the Celtics play.
Did you hear the stat during the game that the Celtics are the only team in the league that is top 3 in scoring offense and defensive categories? They're the only team in the league in the top 3 in both at the same time.
That's interesting. And what's so bizarre is that it was less than a year ago that the people were ready to run Brad Stevens out of town. I just think with the roster that he has, I think he's doing a commendable job there. And,
for sure.
Man, that team can really play the D. But anyhow, that one.
And you know what, Dan?
They bounced back. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say before you go past Stevens, I know everybody talking about KC, but Toronto was good last year, and Stevens has built that team. To me, let's say they finish in the top 3 or 4 in the East. That guy, to me, is the Eastern Conference Coach of the Year.
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I really am an admirer of what he's done with that roster, because he does not have great talent there. I mean, let's face it.
He's got Thomas. He's got
some players, and Crowder, and he's got Sullinger, and Kelly Olynyk, and
Kelly Olynyk,
bunch of guys named Joe, and he's doing a great job with them.
For sure. And that was back-to-back losses, by the way, for the Cavs. They had that ugly one in Charlotte the night before.
Right. Anyway, I just wanted to mention how the Celtics that ruined my night, because you can just sort of see that thing slipping away, and then it ended in the worst possible way. But
yeah, and then they bounced back and they grabbed a couple there, but I mean that was ugly because they had started to roll. They won the 5 straight before that game in Charlotte. Then they lose 2 in a row, stumble a bit, and so now you're going to get the break here. I mean, what are your thoughts as they head in the break? One thing I do like, we're talking about LeBron got the triple-double the other day. I like offensively Kyrie. A week ago, we were talking about the shift. It's been kind of gradually coming here, more of a shooting guard role again this season for Kyrie. He's responding offensively as he's out there. He's put up some good points, and he's really starting to seem a bit more confident with himself, at least on the offensive side.
Oh, he's been unreal. I mean, every time he goes to the hoop, I just say, don't get hurt, don't get hurt. As impressive as the 32 points the other night were the 12 assists. We were talking a week ago about how, playing him at the 2, playing him on the same, at the same time with Delly. And of course, Delly's been out these last few games, but, the 12 assists is as encouraging to me as anything, because he's given the ball up. And, we both agreed that he needed to do more of that. But I tell you, in crunch time, I just soon have Kyrie going to the hoop as anybody. And I'm talking about anybody in the NBA. in terms of, finishing at the basket spectacularly, or just pulling up for little short floaters. He's so good at that, whether he uses a glass or goes straight in. He just is a master at that. He's just been very fun to watch, and I'm just hoping against hope that physically he's able to hold up and that they can give him enough rest during the year, and it'll help a lot when Delhi comes back after the break.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And, those two losses coincided with losing Delhi there a bit, too, as he's such a big piece. He's much more than just a role player this year. He's a big piece of what that second unit does for the Cavaliers. So after tonight's game with the Lakers, Cavs will end the theoretical first half of the season either 38-14 or 37-15 through 52 games, which means they'll have exactly 30 games left when they come back on the 18th to race down the stretch. So 38. Let's assume. I know we're assuming the W, but the Lakers stink this year. So let's assume the Cavs win tonight, 38-14 at the break. What are your thoughts there? And how do you feel about the Cavs heading into this one compared to a year ago at the same spot?
Well, I think what we're looking at right now is a team that's just finally learning to play together. With all the pieces. I'm very optimistic about how this last 30 games is going to go. I mean, the coaching change obviously was a little bit of a hiccup right in the middle of things. They obviously had a good record coming into the coaching change and a couple of speed bumps coming out of it. But I think we've seen that the, up-tempo, offensive scheme that they want to run is now, in place and working, and more often than not, they're putting up 110 or better. And as good a defensive team as they are, it's going to be hard for most any team to hang with them there. They've already had their Texas road trip. I think they have one more West Coast trip they've got to go through. But excuse me, I'm very optimistic about how it's going to finish. I think it's clear that Toronto is really the only threat to them in the East, and I'm a big admirer of those guards for Toronto. I mean, DeRozan and Lowry, those guys are tough as hell. They're going to give everybody problems. They're playing very well, but I do think it's going to come down to, first of all, I can't believe how fast this regular season is going. Normally it seems like it drags on forever. The idea that we're 52 games in already, and I said this the other night on Twitter, and I really believe it. We haven't seen a lot of teams in Cleveland in any sport in the last 35 years or so, 40 years maybe, that are as good as today's Cleveland Cavaliers are. They're just as good a team, as much talent, as much ability, and 38-14 is all you got to say. We haven't seen too many teams in Cleveland that have been this good. And I really feel like when they're on, I got to watch. Because, for Cleveland fans, I feel obliged to watch most every game for this team. And I thought I've got something very pressing going on that keeps me from it because I want to take it all in. I want to savor it. We don't see it all that often. These guys are good. And we haven't seen an Indians team this good for 20-some years, and we haven't seen a Browns team this good for 40 years and 50. So I just feel obliged to watch them, and because they don't, teams like this don't come around that often in this town.
Oh, I agree. Wherever they finish, it's still a lot better to watch a team. Even if they don't win a championship, it's better to watch a team not win the championship and win 60-70% of their games. It's still a better process. But yes,
725, I think, right now.
There you go. Exactly. So
the winning percentage.
That moves it up a bit. And you know what? You and I can do this next week, but I'm just looking at the schedule coming out of the break, and right away, the Cavs hit the ground running. I mean, they have a stretch of pretty much their first 10 games coming out of the break that are all against teams that are either at the top of their game or top of the standings or have beaten the Cavs this year. Check this out. They come back on the 18th of February. They've got a home game against Chicago. They jump out for one game to Oklahoma City to take on the Thunder, and that's a Sunday afternoon game in prime time on ABC. They come back home. They've got the Pistons, who are a tough little team there. Charlotte, who knocked you off in Charlotte just last week. So there's a shot at revenge. And the Cavs need to look for revenge after that ugly loss in Charlotte. Then you go back on the road. You've got Toronto and Washington, two very tough teams. Come back home for Indiana and Washington and Boston. So that's your run just through the first week of March. And those 10 games are all losable games for the Cavs. They're all tough fights for the Cavs, and that right there will set the tone for the second half. And as much as we talk about a long season, I do expect the Cavs to approach the second half differently. The first half is the long part. That's 52 games deep. You take the All-Star break, it's a 30-game sprint down the stretch, and I do think the Cavs start to shift their focus to getting serious and getting their rotations right, getting their defensive switches right, getting into playoff mode, because 30, like you said, look how quick 52 flew by. 30 games is going to fly by like it's nothing, and we're going to be looking at the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, that's right. And if you read Brian Windhurst, the Cavs are looking to make a move.
I saw that. Matter of fact, did you see Bill Simmons?
In trade discussions, people like Jay Dudley and people like Kyle Korver.
Simmons is the one that pitched Korver. Yeah.
So, should be very interesting. See if David Griffin and can pull off a move to upgrade this roster a little bit for the stretch.
I was just going to mention that on the way out with this, as Bill Simmons the other day had popped that rumor of a 3-team trade where the Cavs would end up using their trade exception and they would end up with Kyle Korver in the deal, and a straight deadly shooter like Kyle Korver would be a great addition to a squad like this. At the same time, I jokingly say, how many freaking players does it take to win a championship in Cleveland? I mean, but whatever, man. I don't care. Line up 50 more of them if that's what it takes to get this thing done. I don't care. I don't care if they've got 20 starters and they rotate them all every 2 minutes. Whatever it takes to win a championship. It's not my money and it's not yours either. Let Dan spend whatever he wants to spend, man. Just bring home the ring. Not for the king, but for the city of Cleveland, because Lord knows we got one owner under indictment. We got all kinds of things going on, man. Let's just bring home a ring for Cleveland, man. Let's do it.
That's what we're all looking for.
You know? All right, Dan. Monday, let's jump back into this thing, and that'll be the day that the Indians are reporting. So we'll talk some more baseball. Who knows? Maybe they'll give us something to talk about, and we'll get rolling with some off-season Browns. Hopefully, we're just talking actual football stuff. We'll see where the Cavs are. Talk about the. Are you watching the All-Star game? Do you get into it or what?
Oh yeah, I'm into it. I watch it. It's always good fun. It's nothing like the baseball All-Star game, but I'll be tuned in and. Yeah, I appreciate it, Jared. It's always good to be with you. It's always fun. And, here in Cleveland, it's never boring.
Never boring, for sure. Dan, you working on anything for EHC?
Oh, yeah, I got a thing coming out here, a little bit of off-season Buckeye stuff. We're gonna go up hopefully this week sometime before it's over and have an article at everybodyhatescleveland.com in the next couple of days.
And you and I will go through that on Monday as the Buckeyes finish up their recruiting class, and we'll talk about signing day and all that stuff. Dan, have a great one. We'll catch up on Monday.
Thank you much, sir.
You got it. That's my man, Dan Wismar. I'm J-Rocc. This is another edition of the Sports Fix in the books. Got the All-Star game coming up. I don't know about you guys. I often say I used to love the slam dunk contest. I don't necessarily care for it as much anymore, much at all. I do love the three-point contest. Of all of the All-Star games for all the different sports, my favorite activity of the weekends is the NBA three-point contest, because that is a true skill competition. To me, I just enjoy watching guys shoot. I don't know. The home run derby used to do it for me, but they tweaked the rules and stuff, and it's kind of whatever. I like the old school 10 outs, hit as many of them out as you can. Everything that doesn't clear the park is an out, the old school home run derby. But anyways, I do dig the three-point shootout. Not much for the actual game itself. We'll talk about it, though. Get you guys set. We'll start looking into the second half. As Dan said, we'll talk some Buckeyes and recruiting. We'll see the latest with everything, and we will be back here Monday, live, noon. Same bat time, same bat channel, across the Sports Fix Radio Network. Are the Cavs showcasing Anderson Varejao as they're talking about in the chat room? We'll see. We'll talk about all of that and more, guys, when we come back. Make sure you come back with us here live at noon on Monday. Until then, have a great weekend. Enjoy everything. Thanks to Dan Wismar for being here, and Dan will be right back with us on Monday when we rejoin you live for the Sports Fix. Have a great weekend. We love you, Cleveland and beyond, and we'll see you Monday here on The Fix.
Take it back to Cleveland, where all of the peeps here. Grind all night, sleep once in a leap year. Never had a beach chair, city of the hard knocks. Let one of us make it out the city, bet we all rock. Coming out the east side, where they do not play much. Clouds always looming, we don't see the sun rays much. Still about the paper, gotta make sure the lights on. Just a mistake on the lake to you, but this is my own. Tatted it on my arm, that I represent that. Homie, I'm from Cleveland, I will tell the president that. Hardest, yeah, we been there. Made some of the greats here. Midwest best, this is MGK's, yeah. Shouts out to St. Clair, uptown, yes, y'all. Heading to the flats, get it popping up with step flaws. Old State monster, this the home of King James. We are not the empire, but this is where the kings play. Cleveland, let's go.